5 public forums that the board has organized with department staff to get input from the community on PARCC. These were arranged at Governor Baker's request and suggestion in consultation with the Secretary Pizer. Pleased that you're all here. Thank you. We weren't sure people would brave the weather. Finally nice. We are going to hold 5 of these meetings. They are on various days of the week, distributed across the state at various times from days to evenings to try to give people as many opportunities to give us input as the board approaches a very important decision in the fall on whether to adopt the PARCC test as our new standard in Massachusetts. We want to hear from as wide a range of members of the community, particularly those who have experience with PARCC as it's being trialed in some towns in the Commonwealth, as we try to understand its strengths and weaknesses, certainly relative to MCAS and the system that we have used for many, many years and now understand pretty well. We have asked a series of people who we believe have expertise or relevant current experience with PARCC to come to these meetings, and we've asked, as we've invited them, we're going to take their comments first, and then we'll get to the public. Those of you who signed up, I really appreciate it. We have a table up here with 3 seats, so to try to be as efficient as possible, I'm going to call 3 names. I'd like those 3 speakers to come up and then speak in turn. As you know, there's a time limit set for your comments. About 15 seconds before the time is up, you'll hear a sound. You'll hear that sound. It's automatic, so when you hear that sound, you've got about 15 seconds. Please wrap up to be respectful of everyone else. Because this is meant to be an interactive information gathering session for members of the board. We'll try to interrupt you, but we may ask you questions at the end, so that time comes from our allotment. Don't worry, it doesn't cover the time you've had for your prepared remarks. We really would like to understand what you've learned and your perspective on PARCC and hear from you. We have, as many of you know, we had one of our regular meetings earlier today, so we have actually most of the board here now. So before we begin, I'd like my fellow board members to introduce themselves and tell you where they're from.
Eddie Noyce, Boston.
Marianne Stewart, Lexington.
Jim Pizer, Secretary of Education, Milton.
Mitchell Chester, Commissioner of Education, Elementary and Secondary Education.
Donald Williard, Chairman of the State SAC, Revere.
Ed Doherty, Boston.
I'm Jeff Wolfson, Deputy Commissioner.
And I'm Paul Sagan from Cambridge. So we're going to begin the first 3 speakers. I won't do your introductions, even though I have some of them in front of me. I'd like you to introduce yourself and your relevant experience. That goes for every speaker we call up, so we understand your perspective. So Amy Howland, Dr. Govender, and Superintendent Rodriguez, please.
Hi, my name is Amy Howland. I am the 9th grade level chair at the Academy of the Pacific Rim Charter School in Hyde Park. And I speak to you as a school who has piloted the PARCC for the last 2 years. And just to make sure I explain, the piloting means the first year we piloted, the state sort of mandated the pilot to test the questions, and we didn't receive any of the data afterwards. This year we were asked if we wanted to pilot it, and we accepted. And we're very excited to receive the data. We haven't yet received it, but we're excited to get the data from that. I want to recommend to the board that we adopt the PARCC and give time and more support to districts to adopt and to prepare for the test. There's 3 reasons why I believe that the PARCC is a good test and one that we should continue to adopt. The MCAS, as it currently is not rigorous. The PARCC, because it's connected to the Common Core, The park is testing skills that are much higher thinking, skills that are going to better prepare our students for college and the world beyond, and their job and career. A good example of this is when the Common Core came out, our school adopted it right away, and we had to realign all of our subject areas in sort of 5th through 12th grade. And as a result, I teach history, and my research project became a lot more rigorous. So now my research project in 9th grade has students examine scholarly texts and compare different scholars' opinions and the thesis statements of different scholars, and they have to use those sort of contrasting ideas of scholars to extend their own original thesis. And before the Common Core came out, we were just doing a very standard research project. So I believe that the PARCC, because it tests the Common Core, is going to be a more rigorous test than the MCAS. The second reason is the online format of the PARCC encourages schools to improve their technology. The students are going to need, when they graduate from high school, they're going to need to be well-versed in technology, and most of their tests in college are going to be online, most of their research is going to be online, most everything they do is going to be using electronic devices. And so what the PARCC has already done is it's forced schools to gain more access to technology. So for example, in my school, just in the last couple of years, we've added new computer labs. We have adopted, as part of sort of revamping our curriculum, we've adopted more ways to incorporate technology into the classroom. So the physics class is most all online now. We teach Mandarin, and a good portion of the Mandarin class is online. In the humanities, we use the Google Suite to have students peer edit each other's papers and submit electronically. So I believe the PARCC will continue to encourage schools to adopt technology. And third and last, I support the PARCC because it's better for students with disabilities. And this is really, really crucial. Right now on the MCAS, students' tests are considered invalid if they mismark or incorrectly bubble in something. And that actually happens more often than we realize. With the PARCC, because it's all online, you can't, the clicking and how students sort of log in and answer questions, they're not making those same mistakes. Also, students who have the accommodation to receive the test read aloud to them, with the MCAS, they actually need a whole separate testing location with a separate staff person to do the reading. Right now with the PARCC, they can actually sit amongst all their peers and just have headphones, and the test is read to them. It's really great. Students with accommodations can highlight text online, and they can also, the tests, we could program into the test, because students log on individually and they have their own login code. We could pre-program in their specific accommodations. So it'll mean we can keep more students together in the same place, and it'll be much easier to administer and use much fewer staff to administer it. I only have 2 recommendations to sort of go forward with the PARCC. One is that students who receive this accommodation already are able to use graphic organizers. They're not right now in the PARCC. They can create their own graphic organizers, but we're not testing a student's ability to create a graphic organizer at the PARCC. The graphic organizer helps them access the material, and so they should be allowed to use graphic organizers that they've created ahead of time on the PARCC. And second, the PARCC is a time test, the MCAS is not a time test. It took us years and years and years to prepare our students to take an untimed test. Right? We taught them how to be really diligent, to recheck their answers, to spend a lot of time, and we had students staying in our building till like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, taking the MCAS. And we have some of the highest MCAS scores. In fact, our 10th grade English MCAS is the highest in the state. And so we've done a very good job preparing students for the MCAS. We need to now retrain students to take a time test. Finally, I support PARCC because it...
So would you change that and make it an untimed test?
No, I would keep it timed. I think the time is good. I think I would provide support to districts and more time to districts to prepare students to take a time test. We need to retrain them. And my last sentence is I think PARCC is absolutely worthwhile. It will absolutely prepare our students for college and the career, the job world. We just need more time. Districts need more time and more support from the state to develop and adopt it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So you've got that down. So let me put you on the spot. If you were told to argue the other side, what are the weaknesses?
So one of the weaknesses, I think, is the timed. students were, and so the time and the technology piece, so it's things our students aren't trained to do yet. Right, so the time piece, a lot of our students with accommodations were taking a lot more time, and then you had a huge portion of students who were done in less time. And so that was a challenge of administration to administer the tests. The other challenge is in the technology that students they are not, although they spend so much time on their electronic devices right now, they're not really savvy at taking a test online, on reading on a screen, right? So right now we train students to read and annotate in a text, in a hard copy text, and we need time to totally restructure our classes to teach students how to read on a screen. So we need tablets in the classroom. We need screens they can interact with when they're reading in the classroom.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Ranjini Govender. I'm here as a parent of 2 little boys who will soon be in the K-12 system. I'm here as a former teacher. I used to teach in Chelsea High School, and I'm here in my capacity as well as a Stand for Children member and a member of our state staff. And I want to echo everything that Ann said. I'm trying not to be repetitive, but I think sitting down and looking at both MCAS and PARCC and doing some comparative questions, which we ask all of our members to do, it is quite clear that PARCC is superior in its ability to test a student's ability to think critically, a student's ability to use evidence. And I think for me, as a parent and also as a former teacher, this is a rare day where I am not in front of my computer for 4 days. I think there's, every part of my day is computer-based, and we do a lot of our communication over computer, as you know. And so I think PARCC, a very big strength of it is that it's computer-based and really preparing our students for their future of both college and career. And I think the last thing that I'll share is the voice of principals. So earlier this year, Stand shared with this board the results of our statewide principal survey. So not only in my words, but in also of the words of principals, over 90% of principals, so every 9 in 10 principal across the state, believes that PARCC will have a positive impact on reading, critical thinking, and writing skills over the current standards. And 71% of principals believe that PARCC is more demanding than MCAS. So for us, it is clear we're practitioners sitting on the ground, such as Ann and principals. So I just want to bring forth that voice again. You have the executive summary in front of you, and I'm happy to answer any questions now or later on as well as you take a look at it.
Rodriguez, and I have the honor of being Superintendent of Schools for the Groton-Dunstable Regional School District. I have here with me my colleague, Luke Callahan. He's the Director of Technology, Information, and Media Relations, and the reason he's here with me is because he's really a boots-on-the-ground kind of guy in terms of getting us through the implementation and preparation for PARCC. We are a district that is engaging in PARCC in grades 3 through 8, all online. To gauge staff feedback about PARCC, we recently conducted a survey of all of the proctors of the PBA. We received a response rate close to 50% of all proctors. We administered this survey online, and we asked 2 simple questions: what worked, and what do we need to work on? And we're happy and proud to share the staff's feedback about the areas of strength and the areas that we think we can focus on for growth. In relationship to what works, the staff felt that in general, students navigated the test in a timely manner and that they had enough time to complete the test sessions. Technology was not a roadblock, and the students were comfortable. We used Chromebooks as our devices for the most part. They felt that was a comfortable device for them to use, and they were comfortable with the technology. Students were familiar with the test format, they felt, through the use of practice tests. The tech team was well prepared, provided solid support and availability during testing for them. Having a time limit actually made it easier, they said, in terms of planning instruction for the rest of the day. And through central office and school collaboration, they felt that PARCC setup ran smoothly.
We believe that there are a number of things that contributed to the successes in PARCC
administration. The Student Assessment Services team tasked with supporting PARCC administration was responsive and timely with all requests or concerns we had prior to and during testing. There wasn't an issue we ran across during testing that wasn't handled with attention and concern. As a district, we engaged in some practices we felt also contributed to the successes of this first round of testing. My tech team was tasked with supporting PARCC testing across 4 buildings. Strong communication systems were created with the tech team and were set up with the administration and testing proctors well before testing took place. When testing or technical glitches occurred and the anxiety that would arise, the communication system setup was leaned on heavily to quickly address the issue. Also key to successful testing was an all-hands-on-deck approach. The tech team tried to be overly supportive with fast response times with any technical issues that arose. Through staff meetings and more importantly, grade level meetings, we were able to prepare and answer questions well before testing began. I believe this time was valuable in squelching fears, provided opportunities to discuss concerns, time to find answers, and provide training and articulate the communication system. In addition to proctor training, online learning modules for staff and parents were added to a PARCC resources page on our district website. This page included our district PARCC action plan, virtual training module videos, tutorial videos, and direct links to sample items and rubrics. This was in addition to in-person parent training where they were put on devices and allowed to explore the practice tests themselves and ask relevant questions to district staff.
Although much went well, we wanted to share with you the areas that were identified as challenges as well. In relationship to the areas for further growth and review, the staff felt that the time between the PBA and EOY might be too short, and that they would look forward to...
I can't follow the acronyms.
Performance-based assessment and end of year.
Thank you. Okay.
So there's technically there will be 4 rounds of PARCC. The current one we took is the performance-based assessment, and EOY is end of year. So there's a short window between the time of the administration of the PBA and the end of year assessment. They also were looking forward to the potential in the future of formative results from the PBA that can inform instruction and preparation for the end of year. They felt that some staff did feel that it took a lot of time. Testing took away from instructional time. For example, when there were 5 PBAs, they felt that that might have been a lot for their students. There were limited opportunities for students to practice accommodations, and setting up separate and different accommodation rules for the 2 tests were something that we still need to negotiate and support our staff through. Although generally they felt there was ample time, the one department that they felt that there were some students that didn't have enough time was math as opposed to ELA. ELA, they all pretty much felt that there was enough testing time in their sessions. Staff did report that students said that some of the content in the math PBA, which is to be expected because it's not an end of year assessment, they hadn't covered yet, and that caused some anxiety. We did feel that our devices were taken up during that time, which we couldn't use instructionally, so when you had shared devices, that did take time, so we need to invest in more technology. And it was a large lift for our tech team, so they weren't as accessible as some other areas. And then there was just a couple of technology glitches, which is expected in any trial run, and they had some suggestions that we could bring forward around typing lag. The equation editor was freezing. And if you don't mind, I just want to let Luke just finish off.
As for the areas of need, we appreciate the time to share these with you as we as a state move forward in the review of PARCC. Most importantly, we hope to have quicker access to results so we can use them to inform instruction, and are concerned about the amount of time, the amount of testing time, and the closeness of the administration windows between PBA and end of year. The time our technology staff was used to help support this administration, and that our technology equipment was used, did take away from more instructionally relevant tasks. Thank you all for taking the time to hear from us. Thank you.
We did just want to say that we did find value, and our staff overall did find value in this assessment.
Great. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Can I ask a question? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Sorry.
You're done.
So you talked about too much testing time. Would you elaborate a little bit? Obviously, the combination of the PBA and the EOY, is it the fact that both of those, you were taking both of those tests, or was it something else within either one?
So it was, so for example, some students took up to 5 PBA sessions, and then about 3 to 4 weeks later, they're gonna start taking end-of-year assessments. So it was just the amount of sessions that some students had to take, that the staff.
By grade level?
Yeah, by grade level. And by content area, right? So there was just that question about how much time are we spending instructionally. Now the testing windows are much shorter, so when we say there's a PBA 1 session, what we might have thought in the MCAS would have taken all day, or would have taken 3/4 of the day, really only took 90 minutes. So it's not as if even it was the full instructional window, it was just how many days in succession that was occurring. And there's some work that we're doing as educators. Do you assign homework on the days of PARCC? Do you not? And the MCAS often we didn't. With PARCC, we're saying there's a lot of sessions, and so we're assigning homework during those nights, and that's an adjustment for families, and that's a decision that some instructors are making. We're letting our professional educators make those decisions on their own. But again, anytime you pilot anything new, we're working some of those kinks out.
Donald?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to go to something Amy, or actually I want to echo what the Secretary said. I'll go to that first. In that we're spending more rounds of PARCC for each subject because you have over 3 PBEs and then the end of the year. Correct?
Yeah. Well, again, also there's a number of sessions for both ELA and math.
Yep. So, but rounds of testing for each subject.
Yep.
So in those, are there any sessions of PARCC that are full day?
No.
No? Okay. As far as how much class time these students are really going to be missing compared to MCAS. Also going back to something that Amy said, but I guess Superintendent, this would be a question more up your alley, is that Amy said PARCC forces schools to get more technology. You as a superintendent had to upgrade your technology rapidly. In my mind, kind of drifts off to the districts that don't have or are facing more significant issues in funding, are underfunded, and face poverty, and are very kind of isolated from technology. And I want to know how, if you were in that position as a superintendent, how do you go about that to make sure that your students can take part in the technology platform?
I think part of the reason why we offered to do the online version or agreed to do it is because we felt like we had the capacity, and there are certain districts that are not feeling like they are there, and then they have the option to do the paper and pencil test as well. So there is some of that flexibility built in at the state level for that. I think it's a great excuse for our districts to speak to our towns about the need for technology integration, because although the PARCC is just one assessment that we use, we fully use these devices every day in our schools, and I think no matter the circumstances or financial needs of the district, we can use this as a catalyst because this is a state requirement. So last year, there was, or the spring before, there was a warrant. Both of our towns accepted and agreed to fund technology. We were a very lowly funded technology district prior to this, and this really did help kind of shift some of the thinking across the town. They didn't want that we're a high performance district, and they didn't want their students to lose ground on a statewide assessment, and so it really was a good catalyst for us to bring to the towns and for us as educators to advocate to the towns for technology funding. I also think it's incumbent upon us to have district strategy that aligns to both capital plans that talk about infrastructure as well as technology plans that talk about staffing, because I think the biggest cost of technology is not devices, it's staffing and infrastructure.
Amen. Thank you all. Thank you for being first. All right. Superintendent Ravenel, Kristen Rice Sullivan, and Jennifer Berg. Is anybody in the back there without a seat? No, I guess everybody found something because there are some scattered around. I keep saying 3 names and I keep getting 4 people.
It's all about new math.
New math. I have some questions about new math coming up. All right. You go in any order, but maybe the one I called out. So Superintendent Ravenel.
All right.
Thanks for having us here.
Thank you. Andre Ravenel, Superintendent of Fitchburg, and welcome to Fitchburg, the home of the #1 university. You all know that. Some of the feedback that I have, my technology director is here also, so she'll be speaking about technology. but really a lot of it was the pre-work that took place in the classrooms. It was really important to really familiarize the students with the new format, with the new platform, and with especially a lot of the pieces and parts that they would be using online for the online testing. As we looked at it as this rolled out, what we realized was this was so heavy in terms of staffing needs. Basically, for the whole period of time of the PARCC testing, all of our technology staff were out in our schools doing a lot of the training, setting up everything that needed to be set up, so that it had an impact on, as you heard earlier, on a lot of the other aspects of the work that goes on in the school district every day. So clearly that will become less and less as we become more and more familiar, but the startup time and the amount of energy and staff that needed to be done, at least for that part, was very heavy. Another place where we saw it was actually in the testing, and especially in special education with the small group work that needed to be done. We had to reassign a lot of our guidance counselor, special education staff to these small groups for that testing, which meant that there were other students in the district that for those periods of time were probably not receiving the level of services that they needed to receive. So it was a question of kind of looking at both things and how would we go about doing that and balance that out. And then the last part is, from my point of view, as I spoke with my administrators, the value of the testing, the value and the quality of the testing far outweighed whatever the kind of adjustments that we have to make in terms of moving from one kind of a test. We're very aware that if we didn't move to the PARCC test, we would be moving to some sort of an Uber MCAS test that would really incorporate a lot of the same things. So overall, good experience, out in boots on the ground, some challenges, and I'm going to let Eileen Spinney, our technology director, talk more specifically about that.
Good afternoon, Eileen Spinney, technology champion for education. And I would echo basically what Andre has said. We found that there was a significant learning curve for all of the participants in that. From our students, which we have some control over, to some really significant learning curves for our administrative team. And that was mostly around facilitating and interacting with the dashboard and the technical aspects of the database and additional database that needs to be required to do this type of work. So we actually have gotten over that learning curve, how steep it was, but and we found that we're looking at the end of year testing window that's opening up for next week with less trepidation and a little bit more confidence that we are successful and have been successful and will continue to be. You've heard the idea that this is really advocating for additional technology and technology skills that students really do need, but we were quite concerned about the technology skills and the preparation for our students getting in the way of really letting them demonstrate what they know in the content areas that were being tested. So we are doing some work back in the district now to try and understand what that impact would be, because it's really not something that we're looking at for reporting from the Pearson and the PARCC type of testing. But that still continues to be a concern, not just with our department, but with the school administrators and the teachers that are involved. There are a couple of the technical pieces. You heard someone mention the equation editor. Yes, I had the opportunity to be in every school that was being tested as part of the tech team this year, and we heard some glitches and some concerns with our teachers specifically to that tool. And just speaking to the support that was provided to us by the technical support, we've always received incredible technical support from the DESE, and we continue to receive that during this testing administration. I would say at the national level, when we're working with the PARCC team, the Pearson PARCC team, excuse me, theirs was a little spotty. And so that's another learning curve between the national level and then what's happening when we Massachusetts access. And what is being done to help Massachusetts schools and districts participate in this versus what is being done at the national level continues to be a little bit of a disconnect that we saw. And the one last thing that we really noticed while we're definitely advocating for the use of technology and the skills for the students, it really became another special consideration when we're trying to schedule testing. So we really had to take a look at our student-to-device and where we may have been able to test more students and not have impacted a school calendar the way that we did based on what we're doing and putting more technology in. Hopefully we will address that, but it was another significant consideration. Thank you.
Hello, Kristen Rice Sullivan from Lawrence Public Schools. I'm the coordinator of assessment for the District of Lawrence. I'm going to start with that story a little bit. Lawrence is a level 5 district. Basically, what that means is that we are under state receivership, being led by Superintendent Riley, Jeff Riley, and we're in our 3rd year of turning the district around due to chronic underperformance. And we've seen some great gains over the past 3 years. We've seen increased proficiency rates. We've seen increased student progress. And we've seen great trends in graduation rates. This year, we opted to stay with MCAS. As you know, we were given the option, districts were given the option to select PARCC or MCAS, and Lawrence opted to stay with MCAS. And the main reason for that would be we've been seeing these great gains. We wanted one more year. We had the option of having one more year of data from the same system that we've become accustomed to track our progress and performance, and that we wanted to continue in that direction. So that explains why we opted for MCAS. Last year, we did participate in the PARCC piloting. It was a very successful pilot. We had about 1,400 students across grades 3 to 11. We had a combination of paper and pencil and computer-based testing. Both went very well, but I'm going to echo what I've heard from people that have spoken before me. It required a lot of support from our own tech people in district, and it required a very brave group of test administrators, different people in different schools, because we had 11 schools participate in the pilot. Very brave and willing to kind of take on the challenge and read manuals that would rival the Encyclopedia Britannica, and try to keep up with the constant changes that were coming as they were piloting, and that's what happens with a pilot. People that had tech skills, and they went along with it. The students were excellent. They understood the purpose of the pilot, and they just bought right into that. So we had a very successful pilot, not as successful with the technology support. I would echo that came from PARCC, but great from Lawrence Public Schools. Having said that, we do have some concerns, echoing what other people have said around the timing piece, the timing of the assessment. We also have some concerns regarding the technology. I think that's what you'll hear from most people. That's what most people are concerned about, and we also share in those concerns.
Hello, my name is Jen Berg, and I am a faculty member here at Fitchburg State in the mathematics department. And I am also, and have been for the last 3 years, a representative of Massachusetts with the PARCC team. I'm what's called the PARCC Fellow. I came about that, weird name. I came about that position by volunteering, and it was based off of my experience in teaching first year college, entry-level college courses, my work with assessment, how do we know what students know, how do we learn those things, and also my involvement with teacher preparation. Most of our teachers in the state actually get their credentials through one of the higher education institutions in the state, and I work with them as well. I am here, one of the jobs of the PARCC Fellows is to serve as a conduit of information throughout the whole process of the testing development, to talk both to our people in the state about what's going on, and also to speak back to the test developers to say, your equation editor needs some more work, for example. So I am here in large part to answer any questions that the board might have, because as we heard earlier today from Commissioner Chester and Commissioner Freeland, this can get kind of in the weeds, and one of my jobs as a PARCC Fellow is to both be in the weeds, but also be capable of speaking out of the weeds if people have questions. As a higher ed representative, I would just like to make a recommendation to the board that whatever you decide to do, that you be very intentional in how you communicate with your higher ed partners. I don't believe any members of our state actually believe that the education students receive stop at the 12th grade. And a system that doesn't communicate clearly from the end of K-12 education to branches of higher education isn't meeting the needs of your students. So, do you guys have any questions?
Do you have a view on, we've heard from some K-12 educators that they think it is a more rigorous test, that tests critical thinking more accurately?
Absolutely. So, I would agree. It's a more rigorous test. The split, as you've heard, between the performance-based assessment, the PBA, and the end of year is actually designed in part to ask more open-ended questions, and in particular, more open-ended questions in mathematics. One of the big shifts that happened in the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks on the math side of the house was making sure our students left K-12 education being able to reason quantitatively, make arguments, critique quantitative arguments, and the questions on the performance-based assessment part of the PARCC are really getting at that in a way that a multiple choice question is a much more challenging time getting at.
So one of the question we have to answer is whether we move from MCAS to something this year. So that's our plan.
I know.
As you know. MCAS went to do several things, but one it was set up as the high school graduation requirement. Take it 10th grade, but have several more years to take it again and demonstrate a certain level of mastery. It's been said that it's a test actually that you start taking 10th grade of 8th grade skills and have numerous chances to take, and then a relatively low score to pass. But it is a high school graduation requirement in the state. And PARCC is also described, or alternately described, as really testing your college preparation. While our goal is to have every student who reach 12th grade in the Commonwealth graduate and be ready for college, that's not the case for all, nor the right path for everybody. And so one of the things I think we have to grapple with is it, or can it be used for both things, meaning a high school graduation requirement and a real test of college preparation? And how do you view that? And is there a single score for each student that's going to answer that question, or multiple ways of looking at it? And how do we answer that for the puzzle?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would think it is possible for the score on a PARCC to contribute to high school graduation. Yeah, I'm not incorrect, right? It's not the only thing a student has to do in order to graduate high school.
No, that's right. There are a lot of other things. You cannot test your way out of high school, for sure, even under MCAS.
Wanted to make sure I didn't
expect you to be there for a while and take a whole bunch of courses, but it is one of the things you do have to do. Yeah.
But I definitely think how one test could be used in different parts to answer two questions. It would be your decision to decide now and possibly in the future whether or not that same score would do the same thing. Would a score of college and career ready, do you want that to be equivalent to high school graduation or not? But could the test itself help give you guidance on both of those things? But that I think is possible. And as for could you use the MCAS right now as an indicator of college or career readiness, I've not seen a lot of evidence that it's supporting what college educators know students need in order to really hit the ground running and be successful in their college level classes.
So setting the PBA aside for a second, just looking at the end of year portions, how would you sort of compare and contrast, typical question may be the wrong way of putting it, but the question form and content on PARCC versus MCAS of the same material?
So here I can get a little geeky. It's actually a lot more exciting to answer the questions on the PARCC, and part of that has to do, and especially if you're comparing the MCAS to the online end of year test. The way in which students can manipulate quantities on the page in order to answer the question. So even on the end of year test, there are drag and drop items where you can make equations happen and balance out, or investigate graphs or tables. And from when I heard districts report out on their experience from the technology, the students genuinely liked that. It was a way to engage with mathematics. So if I'm just talking, if I took the same question for content level, the questions are, they're very creative questions that students get to answer in interesting ways.
Just give me an example.
Oh, now I have to give an example.
Because it's very precise, but just, you know.
And all of my work recently has been with the PBA, so I'm going to have to think about. There are end-of-year questions where the students have like 7 options of numbers and relational symbols and operations, and they are asked a question and they have to put those symbols in the right order in order to answer the question. Other examples are you have a student that has a quadratic equation, which might have 2 particular solutions that you're looking for, and they get to enter in the answer that they have, and then are asked if they want to add another one. And this is an interesting test of, does the student know that you might have 2 solutions to it? Whereas on MCAS, it's really just a circling of answers. So there's a little bit more creative thought that goes into it. A student could answer, get just one, and then think, oh, I'm done.
So if you were to, so set aside the online component, MCAS obviously doesn't exist online. But if you were looking at 2 written, paper and pencil versions of the test, would you find that same sort of excitement, if you will, in the PARCC test, or would it end up looking more like an MCAS test? Or and if not, how would it look?
Yeah, and that one I'm not going to be able to answer off the top of my head. Most of the work that I do is with the online one, and so I wouldn't want to give an answer that was inaccurate just because I'm not remembering the paper test as well.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
No?
So I mean, other than, the competency determinations are set in stone until 2019. But I'm wondering if anyone at the table would really have a suggestion as far as what you think either the superintendent or a PARCC fellow, I like that title, it's a fun title, you could recommend to us as the new competency determinations, such as if you pass 2 out of the 3, so you take it at 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, if you pass 2 out of the 3 end-of-year assessments, is that good enough for you to graduate high school? Do you need to pass all 3? Where do you see that line being drawn?
For high school graduation?
Yes.
I'm going to pass this down to Andre to think about my answer while he answers.
While he thinks about his also.
Called using your lifeline.
That's what you guys are having fun. Just agree with him.
I'm going to phone a friend right now. We're quickly consulting about it, and we really need to have the results of the first testing period, because it's all the analytics are different, and I think it would be really hard to say that, because until we get some information back and we're able to kind of quantify that, I would be kind of taking a guess.
So we'll definitely want you back.
Yeah, I will be right here.
Good. Fitchburg. May not be Fitchburg. You might have to come meet us, but.
Good, that was just enough time for my brain to think of an answer. And I'm also going to delay, but I am going to say, so in the earlier board meeting today, I've been in a board meeting all day today. It's been super fun. You have as well. You looked a lot at the P through 16 collaborations, and one of them was talking about sharing data. And as someone who cares greatly about the students who end up on my campus, and I want them to stay, and I want them to succeed, so not talking about the high school competency determination, but if I had information about how that student performed on an assessment covering Algebra 1, covering geometry, and covering Algebra 2, that gave me details like the PARCC does, I've seen the score reports, about where they were doing well, where they needed more work, that would help me place students not only in the right class, but with the right supports so that they could succeed.
So PARCC could be used as part of the placement for colleges
in a way that
remediation.
Absolutely, in a way that MCAS won't. And I would say again that as a PARCC fellow, I had the opportunity to this summer, I'll be working on the standard setting. So I was one of the faculty members who were chosen to go and look at all of the data and try to see where the cut marks are going to be made. So I would agree, having that data and knowing where those cuts happen will help you make that decision when you make it in the fall.
Good. Thank you. I'm going to have to be the time over a little bit. All right. Thank you. Appreciate your help.